apples are still falling. Got this one down there. Picked about 11 today up. So the apples are falling off the tree at a good pace. Like I mentioned, I've picked about 11 up today altogether. This is what's fallen in the last 4 days, and this is about the equivalent to what I had in the entirety of last week. So let's just see how many apples I've actually got there. So I'll just zero the scales and then add the apples into the pan. Okay, so the raw weight of all those apples before doing anything to them is 2616 grams, 2.6 kilos of apples. Apple windfall season is truly upon us, and I could waste these or I could use them. But you know what? I'm a Yorkshireman and we don't waste out. So I'm definitely going to use them. Now I've already got 2 batches of cider on the go. I don't want to make another batch of cider just yet. But I know that if I leave these apples, they'll be no good whatsoever. I could put them in the fridge, but I've only got so much room in the fridge. So what I'm going to do is chop them up and dehydrate them. Once they've been dehydrated, I'm going to crush them down and turn them into powder, and I'm going to store that powder. It will be a dry powder with lots of apple flavour, and I'm going to make cider from that in the future. What it means is I don't have to rush to use my apples up. I must admit, I've been wanting to do this for a while because I've seen other people online making cider from apple powder, so why don't I just have a go at making my own apple powder? You can buy apple powder, incidentally, online. There are lots of retailers, but what's the point? Apple powder contains apples. I've got a dehydrator. I've got apples. Let's crack on and do it. So I've got my big chopper. First things first, I need to slice these apples up. Once I've sliced them, I'm going to put the slices in this jug of water. This jug of water has got some lemon juice in, which will help to keep the apples in good condition until they're ready to go in the dehydrator. Essentially, I don't want them to go brown before I've put them in the dehydrator. Now, when I cut them, there are some apples that have got bad bits on them. I need to remove those bad bits. So the weight of apples that goes into the dehydrator will be less than what it currently is. And I will weigh how much apple is going in there before dehydration begins. Right, I'll keep talking. Let's get on with the recipe. So first things first, I'm going to slice the apples with the knife. I'm slicing them quite thinly, as you can see. Now, these slices are nice. There's a bit of brown there. I've been advised to make sure not to add the brown in because apparently it stays bad and it can taint the other powder. Now, I don't know that because I've never done it, but that's what I've been told. So I'm going to stick with that for now. They can go in the water. And I'm going to get to the point where I'm nearly at the core. I can see the core coming through now, so then I'm going to start on the other side of the apple. And again, I've got some brown there, so I'm going to cut that brown off, pop that in, and I can see I've got lots of brown there, so that's going to have to come off. So because these have fallen from the tree and basically bounced off fences and off branches and off the floor, then they're going to have bruises. Some of them have also been attacked. So here's an example of an attacked apple, and another one just there. So these have been attacked by the local jackdaw bird population. The jackdaws love pecking at the red bits. They peck at them, peck at them, peck at them until the apples fall off the tree. They're an absolute pain, actually. They're the biggest predator for my apples that there is, apart from me. Anyway, I'm still going to use them, but I'm going to make sure I cut round the bad stuff. So hopefully I've explained that enough to you. All I've got to do now is keep chopping the apples and filling the jug. I'll come back to you when I've got a jug full. Okay, I've reached a point where I want to start loading up my dehydrator racks. However, before doing so, I'm just going to weigh the racks so I know how much I've got here. So I've got 669 grams of racks. That's going to help me better judge how much apple I've got. So just on the rack, which is on my chopping board, I'm going to start to layer these slices of apple as the jug's getting a bit packed. So I'm going to start to move them out of there so I can get more in. So it's a bit of a conveyor belt process, basically. Anyway, once I've emptied this jug onto the racks, I'll come back to you. Okay, from what was in the jug, I've nearly filled 3 racks, so I'm just going to carry on now, chopping, adding to racks, and I'll come back to you when my racks are full. So before I can get these in the dehydrator, I now need to weigh how much is here with the racks and the apples, so I can work out how much apple is actually here. So this now weighs 1435 grams of apple. So I'm just going to weigh the amount of apple rubbish. This stuff is basically going to go back on the garden as fertiliser. So I've ended up with 471 grams of apple rubbish, which is quite a high ratio, but they're small apples and they were damaged. It's been a bit of a mathematical one, this, but I'll explain to you where I am. So I brought in 2.616 kilos of apples, 2,616 grams of apples altogether. However, I've only used 1,237 grams or 1.237 kilos, which is just under half of the total amount of apples that I brought in. So when I weighed the apples on the rack, they weighed 1,435 grams, but the racks weighed 669 grams. So if I deduct the weight of the racks from that, that meant that what's gone in the dehydrator is 766 grams. So that is what has gone in the dehydrator, and I'll be weighing that when it comes out to see what 766 grams becomes when it's been dehydrated. That will go there. Now this stuff, the rubbish, if I add that to the 766 grams, so there's 471 grams of rubbish, that tells me that 1,237 grams of apples has led to 766 going in the dehydrator. Yes, it's lots of numbers, but it's going to help me to work out ratios because I won't be weighing it every single time I do it. What I'd like to know is that for every 1 kilo of apples that I get off the tree, how much powder I'm going to get. Or conversely, for every 100 grams of powder, how many apples that represents when it comes to making the actual cider. I hope you're following that. If you're not, don't worry about it. It's just numbers. It's all still going to work out in the wash. Anyway, let's get these in the dehydrator. Okay, so here's my dehydrator. It's a TurboTronic TurboWave Bio, an Amazon purchase basically. It's been quite useful to me. So I'm just going to open it up and I'm going to slide in the racks. Okay, so that is all of my apples in the dehydrator, door closed. It's currently on 80. It suggests 80 for apples and it also says 10 hours. So I'm going to turn it around for 10 hours. This is going to be an overnight dehydrate. Right, I've had enough anyway. So I've got to leave this overnight. I'll come back to you in the morning. We'll have a look what the apples are like after 10 hours and we'll take it from there. See you tomorrow. Morning folks, it's the next day. Let's have a look at that apple. So I'm hopeful that this will be properly dehydrated. If it still feels like it's not crispy, let's have a check. Well, that snapped okay, that I think. Although it does feel, I don't know, I'm not quite sure actually. Yeah, I think that's okay. Sometimes you get a feeling that it just still feels a little bit damp, despite them being crispy. Because what you don't want is any dampness, because if you've got dampness in there, they'll go mouldy. We'll try a taste test. Whilst they are dry, there still seems to be a tiny bit of residual inside, so I'm going to put them in for another 2 hours. I'll come back to you in 2 hours' time. Hey folks, 2 hours is up. I'm now going to get the apples out of the dehydrator. I'm going to put them into this red mixing bowl. And just to sort of show you what I've got, they've definitely all shrunk in size and these are nice and crisp now. I'll come back to you when I've got them all in the bowl. Right, they're all in the bowl and this is what I've got. Nice and crispy apple pieces. I'm just going to break these down a little bit and I'm going to do so with a rolling pin. And it is literally just a case of a big pestle and mortar and just bashing them down and trying to prevent them from flying out. When I've brought them down a bit more, I'll come back to you. So unfortunately, as I'm breaking them down, I can feel that there's still moisture in there. These are just not crispy enough. They need to literally be like potato chip crisps that you'd have in a packet. And there's definitely still some moisture in these, so I need to dry them a little bit longer. So instead of putting them back in the dehydrator, I'm going to spread them on this tray. Nice and evenly, like so. Incidentally, if you're wondering what the background gurgling is, it's my blackcurrant apple and rhubarb cider, which is currently doing quite nicely. So to further dry these out, I'm going to put them in my mini oven and not my dehydrator. So I'm going to put it on the lowest temperature, which is 100. I'm going to have it on fan oven and I'm going to put it on for 45 minutes. So when I'd put these in the dehydrator, I'd followed the instructions on the dehydrator which said apple at 80 for 10 hours. It evidently wasn't enough. They've done 12 hours and there's still some residual moisture in them. So it's probably better to be looking at 14 to 16 hours altogether at 80. So we'll have another look at these apple bits in about 45 minutes time. See you then. Okay, these are still drying out in the oven, but in the interim, I've managed to get some more apples chopped up and into the dehydrator again, just here. And this time the weight of the apples is 695 grams. This is going to allow me 2 different dehydrations to compare the ratio as to what you get after dehydration and before. And at some point I'm going to be able to say an average is whatever it works out at. I'll probably do another couple after this and then get a really sort of broad average using different apples. Hey folks, I'm back. I actually had the apple chips in the oven for 90 minutes at 100 before they've come to what I would deem the right sort of feel. These are definitely crispy now. There's no moisture in them at all. In fact, they're like toasted oak chips. So I'm going to get them back in the bowl. And once again, I'm going to break them down with this before going to the next step. Okay, this is nice and crushed. So now I'll need to turn it into powder. And I want to do that using a coffee grinder. So I just need to get this filled up. So base goes on. And now the noisy bit. So by slicing those apples, by dehydrating those apples, by breaking them up and now smashing them down, this is what those apples look like. So I'm going to pour them into this tub. I've got to do the same with the rest. I'll come back to you when I've done that. And here it is. I'll show you. That is what 766 grams of dehydrated and powdered apple looks like. Now imagine the efficiency of storage and the long-term storage now in being able to do this. So I'm just going to weigh this empty tub, 24 grams. I'm going to zero that. Now I'm going to put this one on. 85 grams. So on this occasion, 766 grams of apples is the equivalent of 85 grams of apple powder. Now working backwards, when it comes to making cider from the powder, I then know what the equivalent would be if I was putting actual apples in there. So I'm going to put my powder in a jar. Lid on. And that's the first lot done. I'm definitely going to fill this jar up, if not today, in the next couple of days. And I'm going to carry on and carry on. I need to do some maths and work some ratios out. I'll come back to you when I've done that. So those apples are still in the dehydrator and will be for a while. I will work out the ratio of them when they come out. But I've just had another brainwave, and what I've done is I've chopped up some more apples and put them in the mini oven. And I'm going to try them on 120 on a fan for the full length of time I can, which is 2 hours. And I'm just going to leave them and see what happens. It's possibly more economical to do it in the mini oven than it is in the dehydrator. I actually don't know. But anyway, I'll give you an update on these just out of interest and let you know. Right, I've done the maths. So this is 85 grams of powder from 766 grams of apples. So working back, for every 100 grams of powder, that's the equivalent to 901 grams of apples. Okay, let's just say 900. So I know that 9 times is the ratio. So or the proportion, I should say. So if I put 100 grams of this into a demijohn, that's the equivalent of me putting 900 grams of apples into a demijohn. So that's on this one today. I'm going to work it out for the other one, which I'm doing also, and get an average. I'll come back to you when I've done all that. Busy kitchen, but let's just have a look in the oven. So this is what has been on for 2 hours at 120, and it's really floppy and rubbery, nowhere near done. So I'm going to put it on, I'm going to leave it on 120 now, and I'm going to whack it up for another 2 hours and see what happens. So these are the apples that have come out of the mini oven, and they do now seem to be, yeah, I would say that these are good to go. So I'm going to powder them just like I did the others, as in crushing them in the bowl and then putting them through the grinder and then adding them into here. Hey folks, I'm back. It's a few days later. I've been picking up Windfall apples, dehydrating, picking up Windfall apples, dehydrating, doing the maths, working it all out. It's been a bit of a journey, so I want to show you what I've got after a few days worth. That is all apple powder. These are apple chips. These are not ones I've turned into powder. These are ones I've just put in the blender to break down, so for storage reasons I can get, easily get more in here. It's more efficient basically. But yeah, they're apple chips. And these are somewhere in between. These are like apple, they're almost like biscuit crumbs really, if you can see them in there. And these were powder, and I made a mistake, and what I did was I'd turned them into powder and I'd left them out, covered over with a net. But what the powder had actually done was absorb the moisture from the air because they were so dry and began to rehydrate naturally. So I've had to put them back in the dehydrator, and it's turned them into what looks like biscuit crumbs. Now, some of these apple chips in here, I've dehydrated in the mini oven and some in the big oven as well. And I've found that the ones that I've dehydrated in the oven at 120 come out more like oak chips than apple. They still taste okay, but they lose a lot of the apple flavour, and they've got a slightly more burnt taste, a bit bonfirey. So I'm quite curious as to how that will translate as a cider. Am I going to get like a smoked cider? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. But I think the ones which have got the best flavour are the ones which have been dehydrated and powdered like I did initially. Now, what's the ratio? So, whether I've got this, whether I've got this, or whether I've got this, for every 100 grams of this powder, that equates to 880 grams of apple flesh. Okay, so not 880 grams of apples because you get rid of some of the bits of the apple. 880 grams of apple flesh. So going forward now, I need to try making a cider with this, and I'm going to do 2 kilos equivalent of apple flesh per gallon, and then see what that turns out like. So that's going to go in a different film, so have a look for that. That's going to be called something like making cider from dehydrated apple powder or something like that. Anyway, this is still a big learning curve for me, but I thought some of you might be interested in this, especially those of you that will have storage issues when it comes to apples. Obviously the dehydrator costs money to run, so in terms of truly how efficient this is, I don't actually know. But anyway, it's been an interesting journey for me and another little experiment. So I hope you've enjoyed the film, and I've got a few ciders to make now. See you later. The film that you've just watched is a Moss Home and Garden production. You can find more by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. I'd just like to say thank you very much for supporting my YouTube channel and for watching my films. It really is very much appreciated. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in order to receive future updates about the home and garden films which I upload. You can find my YouTube channel by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. Please click on the red subscribe button. When you've done that, a little bell will appear. If you press that also, then you'll get future updates about the films which I upload. If you like my films, if you like my style of filming, then you might also like my travel channel, which you will find by going to youtube.com/Stuart Moss or type in www.mosstravel.tv. Again, if you could subscribe to that channel, it would be hugely appreciated. If you'd like to get Moss Home and Garden updates on Facebook, then please open Facebook and do a search for Moss Home and Garden, and you will find the page. If you like the page, then you will get future updates on there. And if you'd like to connect on Instagram for home, garden and travel photography, as well as some stories, then my username is StuMoss, STUMOSS. If you'd like to connect on Twitter, then my username is @StuartMoss. And if you'd like to contact me about film usage or any other issue, please just email me on stewmosshomegarden@gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for supporting my channel, for watching my films. I do appreciate it. I'd just like you all to have a great day.